Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Talkin Fire. My name is Dean Babineau. Our guest with us is Matt Berkins. We're going to talk about kind of how Matt landed here on the episode tonight and his background and why I thought he'd make a perfect guest for us. We're going to talk about training, we're going to talk about fundamentals, but first, we're just going to talk about Matt. Hi, Matt.
Hey, what's going on?
Not much so far, so good. We got
Hmm.
some snow coming in tomorrow. I kind of mentioned that earlier. We got to have to
Yeah.
do that, but you know, you came to the podcast because I reached out because I read Fire Engineering Magazine, and it's
Yep.
back in the December edition. This one, if people are like looking back in that
Yep.
one, you wrote a letter to the editor, and they published it. I don't know if they publish them all. I don't know how that works, but they published it, and it was just simply titled "There is no secret ingredient,"
That's it.
and even the topic is about like just fundamentals, and there's no secret ingredient about getting your reps in, doing your work. And what struck me as equally interesting about the article, it's just 2 columns long. Like the article itself's no BS. Like the article itself is just straightforward.
Hmm.
And I read the magazine cover to cover, and then kind of what I do is I put it down. I don't look at it for a couple of weeks, and then I pick it back up and see if there was anything that really resonated with me. And I got back to some notes I had made about your article. So then um, I had already had a couple of episodes of the podcast out there, and I was thinking, how do I get new guests? And then all of a sudden, it kind of dawned on me that, well, I can just reach out to these people in this magazine, like of the people that had interesting articles. And there was, I'll admit, in December, there was a bunch of interesting articles, but there was only two that I said I'm going to reach out to people, and here we are. So, um, let's talk about how you end up in the fire service. You haven't been in the fire service for very long,
No, not at all.
but how do you end up in the fire service?
My father was a firefighter for 20 years here in the same city where I work currently in Slidell, Louisiana. And I kind of stumbled into it by accident initially. Um, I was going to college after high school, and Louisiana offered a grant for volunteer firefighters. If you were a volunteer firefighter for 2 years, you could get a certain amount of money towards college. So I
Perfect.
started volunteering in a neighboring city, ended up really liking it, was in the process of transitioning to start pursuing firefighting as a career when just talking to guys that I worked with in the military, I became interested in joining the military. Went the Army route. I was in the Army for 7 years. Ultimately, I went in as an infantryman with a Ranger contract. So I did infantry basic training, airborne school, straight into Ranger selection. And then from there, I was assigned to 1st Ranger Battalion in Savannah, Georgia, which is part of the 75th Ranger Regiment. So I spent my entire career, all 7 years, in the 75th Ranger Regiment. Transitioned out of the Army, began working for the CIA as a security contractor for a few years, did that for 3 years. And then when I decided it was time for a change, I was like, well, I really liked being a firefighter. It seemed like something I could still resonate with. So I moved back to Louisiana and got hired on with this department in Slidell. And
And
here we
here we
are.
are. So Slidell, that's just north of New Orleans.
Yeah, it's just north of New Orleans, just the north side of the Lake Pontchartrain.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, so that's where you grew up, kind of that
Yep.
area?
Yep. Born and raised in Slidell.
Oh, so that's really cool.
Yeah.
Um, and it kind of ties into something that I was talking to somebody about earlier, was this idea that um, if people get in the fire service when they're young, sometimes we can just instill like that sense of belonging,
Hmm.
and that making being a firefighter almost part of their identity. And then even if they leave, maybe they'll come back, and that almost sounds like kind of what you did. You boomeranged, right? So you left for
Yeah.
a while, and then you came back. um so yeah, I'll ask. So you mentioned to me on the phone that originally you thought about being a corpsman,
I
and then
did. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then but that they weren't looking for, they couldn't guarantee you corpsman spot.
Exactly. Yeah. I was interested in the medical side.
Sure.
Department I was volunteering for, which is in Pearl River, Louisiana, runs an ALS ambulance service. So hanging out of the station trying to catch calls as a volunteer, majority of what they were jumping on the ambulance and riding with those guys. So I was interested in the emergency medicine. My father was in the Navy, so I was like, okay, I'll check out the Navy, be a corpsman. My idea was go the Fleet Marine Force route and be a corpsman for the Marine Corps. And then when I tried to go that route, the corpsman slots weren't available or they couldn't guarantee it. So I was like, well, next best thing in my mind was like a combat medic with the Army. So I went next door to the Army recruiter's office and was like, well, I want to be a combat medic. Started going through the process with them. Same thing. They couldn't guarantee me a medic slot. They didn't have any slots for the medic basic training or the training in general. I was like, well, shoot, I can't go back to the Navy. I just burned that bridge.
You're not going to get a
So
good deal now.
exactly, yeah. And I was like, well, I wanted to be a combat medic to be with the infantry, so I asked for an infantry contract. And then my recruiter, in his wisdom, was like, the only infantry contract I have is an airborne ranger, and I had no idea what that was. I was like, all right, well, that sounds cool. Um, and I remember actually going back to the firehouse that night. I was staying there that evening and looking up on YouTube Army Ranger just to see what it was. And I was like, oh man, what did I just sign up for? So it was all kind of an accident.
Sure. Um, yeah, it isn't that funny, like how that's how life happens, right? It's just kind of
Hmm.
accidental, and then we end up wherever we end up.
Yeah,
And that's kind of cool in and of itself. So, obviously, you're somebody who believes in the fundamentals, the basics,
very much so.
and getting those down pat. Um, reps leads to kind of that perfection of our
Yep.
craft. Uh, where'd that come from? Is that something like military? Is that something, or is that just something like Matt brings with him from forever ago? Like,
In some aspects of the military, yes, really it's from the special operations community in general. I would like to say it's specific to the Army Rangers, but it's really not. Every successful major organization follows kind of the same concept, whether it's Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Marine Recon, MARSOC, Army Rangers. It's it's a foundation that's built on the mastery of the basics. That's what was drilled into my head from the beginning was masters of the basics, masters of the basics. And the idea is being so good at the fundamental tasks that the rest of the Army does, that the rest of the Navy does, whatever branch you want to look at, that you can operate in those more intense environments, operate more aggressively, more violently, and ultimately overcome the enemy by being a master of the basics. And that's broken down into every aspect of the training you want to look at. Like in the article, we talk about the big five of the Ranger Regiment. They kind of identify five pillars of proficiency, which would be your marksmanship, your physical fitness, your medical training, your small unit tactics, and your mobility. So mastering the basics in those five areas makes you a well-rounded Ranger in that sense.
and then if you apply that back to the fire service, we learn
Yeah.
fundamentals, and if you learn the fundamentals and do them well, presumably, um, you don't get yourself into trouble. If you do, you can get out of it.
Yep.
And if you've got to rescue either a civilian or brother, sister firefighter, you're probably more apt to be prepared to do that.
Yeah. 100%. That's what resonated so much with me when I started listening to podcasts and doing my own research and stumbled across Scott Thompson from the colony in Texas. And he had actually identified a big five for the fire service, which, like it says in the article, would be hose drills, ladder drills, PPE, firefighter assistance survival, and tool operations, which I think pretty well encompasses like the basic tasks and skills of like a skill level one firefighter, where you should be very proficient. And the way it was explained to me is kind of like a perforated line on a road map. Like this, you're getting from point A to point B on this perforated line. It's not solid. You don't need to stay on it, and you're able to from that line and come back to it via those basics.
Hmm, interesting. Um, so I'm going to ask kind of early on here because I am, and I didn't mention this the other day when we talked.
Yeah,
Um, you bring up Kung Fu Panda,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
That's a great movie.
of all the movies you could reference, and it's in the very beginning of the article, and I'm like,
Hmm.
oh. And what's funny is, I got it. Like I think that,
Yeah.
and it might have even hooked me on the next two columns. And even though the two columns probably stand on their own without a Kung Fu Panda reference, I think that,
Hmm.
um, why? Where do you get that?
It's just, I mean, I do like the movie. It's pretty cool. I'm a big
Yeah,
Jack Black fan.
there you go.
Um, but it really is that simple. I thought it was a very funny part of the movie when he's talking to his adopted father, he's a panda, he's a duck, about the secret ingredient soup. Like he's feeling down on himself. He's like, "What's the secret ingredient?" He's like, "I'm gonna tell you just to make you feel better." Um, he's like, "There is no secret. It's noodle soup." By telling people there's that it's special is what makes it special. Um, which applies directly to special operations. Everyone thinks there's some different crazy factor that makes special operations units better than everyone else. Like it says in the article, yes, we have more funding, which gives us access to the equipment that we choose, more opportunities for training, but really that training is all focused on the basics, the fundamentals, the boring stuff is really what it boils down to. And that's what makes these units successful. That's what makes them special is that they dedicate the time, those boring hours over and over and over to drilling on the stuff that nobody wants to do. Going outside when I was a team leader with my team to just do mag changes with your rifle for an hour or two, just sitting there, somebody yelling cold, drop a magazine, put a new one in. Cool, drop a magazine, put a new one in. That gets very tedious, very boring. Um, Ready up drills, standing outside, same thing. Turning to one side, someone calling up, you turn and face the target, align your sights, pull the trigger. Doing that for hours and hours, the very basic, boring things.
So you mentioned you were a team leader.
Yes.
How do you get people to do that? So like when we think about drilling the fundamentals, whether it's doing a mag change or whether it's throwing a 24-foot ground ladder,
Mm-hmm.
um, how do you think we get people to see the value in the repetition of that fundamental basic skill?
It's tough because really you don't see the value until game time, until it's time to actually execute, whether it's in a training drill or on an actual fire. But if we're talking about motivating them to want to do that, it's tough. It comes down to individual motivation, but really as a leader, it's as simple as you got to do it too. If you're doing it, they're doing it. It's not do as I say, it's I'm going to do it first and then you're going to do it with me. And we're all going to be out here doing the boring things together.
Right. Like the next 2 hours of our lives is going to be probably miserable, but we're
Yeah.
all going to do it together and we're going to do it until we can't get it wrong. And
Yeah, exactly.
we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. There's a lot of people
Hmm.
struggle with um, okay, we all know how to do it. Yeah, but do we, or did we get lucky? Right?
A lot of
Because
times.
there's always that element. There's always, we talk about it, teaching firefighters that, when you have a company go in, a company say recruit firefighters or new
Yep.
firefighters, and they go in and they get something right, and we're always like, "Oh, they did a great job. They mastered the skill." No, what if they just got lucky? What if they actually just got lucky?
Yes.
And I would rather them screw something up, and then
Yeah.
we've got something to correct. They've got something to learn from, and then at least we know what they messed up. Now, if they do the drill 3 or 4 times and they didn't mess anything up, maybe they have mastered that
Hmm.
particular skill. Maybe they've got really good at that one thing. But when they come out the gate and we show them one, they do one, and then we they do it again and they get it right, and it's like, oh yeah, they mastered that. No, 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 they've gotten it right. But I think so
Hmm.
many times we're quick to say, okay, next, okay, next,
Yes.
uh, and people want to move on to the cool stuff. I mean, people,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I would assume that somebody new, if you can think back to when you were new in Ranger School, that
Hmm.
like there's got to be that element of, okay, when are we doing the cool stuff? Like when does, and not realizing that the cool stuff is actually just the fundamentals done really, really well.
Yeah. The cool stuff never quite shows up.
Right, right. The cool stuff's the secret sauce. It's just not there. There's no secret ingredient. There's no cool stuff.
Yeah.
It's being able to do this fundamental skill really, really well at a high level that becomes the cool thing.
Yeah. The cool stuff is when you've put in that work for hours, weeks, months, years, and you get that little bit that 2 hour mission where you execute everything flawlessly, or in the fire service when you've been training your whole career and you have that 30 seconds of just perfect performance.
Mhm.
That's the cool stuff when that's all over and you're like, wow, that was worth it. That worked.
Yeah, and I think that's depending on where you're on, you could go your whole career and never have to execute.
Yep.
So you could work your fundamentals for your whole career
Yep.
and be someone that never has to execute. Like your company's not the company that's there, or your shift's not working when there's the fire, whatever it might be. You
Hmm.
could land in a position where you never have to execute on what you're prepared to do, or it could be your next tour.
Yep. And that's more of that motivation aspect is that's it doesn't matter if that's your company. Like when that moment comes, when those 30 seconds come, like the public still expects you to operate like everybody else would.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that can't or that may struggle to execute,
Yes. Yeah.
and that's unfortunate. Um, but I think that a lot of times the fundamentals don't. You always hear like after something happens, we talk about, oh, we get back to basics training.
Hmm.
We used to do a lot of that up here in the Northeast. It'd be seminars, back to basics, back to
Yep.
basics.
We have the same thing.
But isn't the reality, is it all basic? I mean, I
It's
don't,
all basics.
I mean, yeah, like the tech rescue stuff, add-on stuff, hazmat tech, add-on stuff. Sure, there's some add-on things that really build upon the basics.
Hmm.
I mean, most of what we do is not anywhere near beyond basic. It's stretch and hose line, it's throwing ground ladders, it's conducting primary search.
Yeah. It's all those skill level one tasks.
Yeah, and refining them to the point that you're really good at them, uh,
Hmm.
where you can do them in real world fireground scenarios. But so, what inspired you to write the article? Like, what? When did you sit down and say, you know, I'm going to write an op-ed piece and I'm going to mail this in as a letter to the editor?
It's a lot of frustration, my own frustrations, not with my department necessarily, but with the fire service as a whole. I've had to sort of temper my expectations, if that makes sense,
Mhm.
coming from a very high performing organization, an elite organization in my mind,
Mhm.
to the fire service. Not that there aren't elite units and elite fire service organizations, but the expectations are a little bit different, if that makes sense.
Oh,
So
I think it
I
does.
come from a place where in the Ranger Regiment we have something called release for standards, or RFS, where if you don't meet the standard, it's very easy to get rid of somebody. It's very easy to be like, you're not cutting it, you don't need to be here. Um, and that, as we know, doesn't exist in the fire service.
Right.
Not easy to get rid of somebody who is not meeting those standards, is not putting forth the effort. And that's where a lot of the frustration on my end comes from. Now, I'm not saying that that's entirely correct or acceptable. I understand as I get older and move through the fire service that it's not always the individual's fault. Life happens, things get in the way. We go through ups and downs, we go through burnouts. Like there's a lot of things going on in the background that we don't always see. Um, but because of that, that's where I've been jotting down notes and writing things and kind of getting these ideas together. Is out of frustration just to put it on paper, um, kind of like a therapy for myself, if that makes sense.
Sure. No, it makes complete sense. It's a great way to, well, everything you just said makes complete sense, but that's a great way to deal with some of those thoughts, right? Is to
Mhm.
just write them down. Because you're right, is that we don't have a quicker mechanism to deal with people that don't want to do it, right?
Mhm.
I mean, it comes down to the uns, right? Most people are some people are unable. I mean, if somebody's unable, we can usually figure that out.
Yeah,
It's people that are unwilling that are bothersome,
it's frustrating.
right? The unaware, we'll make the aware. We'll get them aware. They'll figure it out. Hey, fundamentals are important. This is why. But it's those people that are just like, yeah, whatever. I I got
Yep.
10 years left. I got 5 years left. Like it's a prison sentence.
Hmm.
I've always thought that's funny. And people in public safety, and I don't care whether you're in law enforcement side or fire side, at least around here, and I can imagine it's everywhere. Everyone always
Yeah.
talks about how long they have left. Like it's again, like it's a prison sentence. Like, oh yeah, I got 10 years left. I got 15. And people know it from early on. You go,
Hmm.
oh, I got 20 years left.
They
20
start
years.
the countdown immediately. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not even halfway. Like, what do you shouldn't have any time left. You should be enjoying every minute of it.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes we then start to treat it like that. I don't want to
Hmm.
do the 2 hours of fundamentals because at the end of the day, I've only got 10 years left. I've only got 5 years left. I've only got whatever.
Hmm.
Um, Not realizing that it is every single one of those fundamentals that is going to prepare us for whatever and make us ready um, to go to battle, right? Because I mean that's what we do as
Yeah.
fire when we go to battle.
It
And
really is.
yeah, I mean, and we don't do it often, or well, it depends on where you are.
Yeah.
We don't do it often. Um, and I think a lot of times we hedge our bet that we're going to get lucky and we're going to get it right.
And most of the time we do.
Most of the time we do. And when we don't get it right, there's usually something else to blame.
Yes.
No, so even we get lucky when it doesn't go right, that instead of having to say, I wasn't ready to throw that ladder, I wasn't ready to stretch the hose line, and I let my team down, there seems to be something else that works out that we can blame.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, the topography wasn't able, couldn't throw the ground ladder because the land was all messed up. And it might be true.
Yeah.
So I got lucky because I didn't get tested because I didn't have to do it because of some other factor. Or the ladder company beat the engine there and the ladder's going to throw the ladder and the engine's not going to have to throw a ladder or whatever. Like
That's a
whatever
good
it comes
point.
down to, and so even then we have the times we get it right, and then we have the times we get it wrong. But then the times we get it wrong, there's some other factor besides
Hmm.
I was unwilling or I was unable, that we get lucky on, and we can blame this other thing. And so it's like even then we don't always end up in that scenario where we have to be very honest and say, yeah, I'm not good enough right now. I need to get better. I need to drill on this. I need to get better at this thing,
Hmm.
whatever this thing is. Um, so that's kind of an interesting. Okay, so
Yeah.
you've been in the fire service 3 years ish,
Yep.
almost four. I think that's what
Yeah.
four.
I'm working on year number 4 right now.
Yeah. So um, obviously you've got some good time to go. I mean, like you're definitely. I mean, I'm sure somewhere kind of when you can retire, but I don't think you're the kind of guy that's counting it down. I think you just it
Yeah.
looms out there. I mean, if you ask me when I was going to retire, I can tell you at some part right around 2040 is probably where my retirement date
Yeah.
sits. It's not circled on a calendar. It's not going to happen. It's not a guarantee, but that's about when,
Hmm.
I hit a sweet spot in the retirement system that goes, okay, well, I can retire in 2040, which it seems far away, but it's also pretty close, I guess. Um, so what do you think is your next step?
Well, retirement is definitely not on the table yet. So I'll probably be somewhere around 60 before I even start thinking about that.
There you go.
Um, Really, the next step in the fire service is just day by day trying to be a better firefighter.
How
Really,
big
really.
Slidell fire? Like what's your
So we run right now. We have 9 stations. Building a 10th, we're running about ish calls a year. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less,
you cut out
depending
when
on.
you said that, so all I got was ish.
Oh, about 10,000 calls a year.
We missed that part.
Got you.
That would have been crazy to miss 10,000. So about 10,000. That's considerable call volume.
Yeah, yeah. It's spread out over a wide area. We run 200 suppression personnel about when we're at full staffing. So it's a decent sized department.
Three platoons or four groups.
3, yeah, we run a
Three.
24/48.
Okay, 24. Got it. Okay. So um yeah, it's a good sized department.
Yeah,
And um mutual aid, a lot of mutual aid, not a lot of mutual aid.
a little bit with our surrounding departments. We have, I'm pretty sure we have mutual aid agreements with the surrounding cities
Mhm.
for them to backfill us
Yep.
if it gets to that point, and then we have certain areas, the cities to our east and our west, where if they have structure fires, will automatically dispatch a unit.
You don't do transport, EMS transport.
No, no, we have paramedics, EMTs, and first responders, but we have a private ambulance service that does the transport.
And water rescue? Because are you on the lake?
Yep, on the lake, a lot of waterways in and around Slidell. So we have a heavy rescue unit that has swift water rescue capabilities, rapid diver capabilities, and then the areas, the stations that are closest to the lake have their own rapid diver and swift water stuff.
What's your assignment right now?
On paper, I am a firefighter on our rescue truck. I'm also, at this point in my career, kind of like a fill-in driver. So if somebody calls in sick or there's a spot that needs to be filled, I kind of float around and fill in as an upgrade operator, whether that's on an engine or a ladder. Our ladders are quints, so they kind of operate both. Um, but that's it. Sometimes I get to be a firefighter. Sometimes I get bumped up. So a little bit
I
of
mean,
everything.
that's cool. So, I mean, again, not that it's. I mean, listen, 9 stations is about 8 more than I came from. So, I mean, but I mean, it gives you a lot of experience citywide.
Yeah,
Uh,
it does.
right. So, whatever becomes next, I think that always proves to be valuable.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and it falls in line with your belief about fundamentals and the ability to do kind of what comes at you. And
Yeah.
that's the thing is that some people get locked into that. Well, I'm an engine person. I'm gonna be on an engine forever. I only want to be on an engine, or I only want to be on a ladder, or whatever it might be. And they get locked into just one thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, and sure, they might get really good at that one thing, but they're only good at one thing. And then if it comes down where they have to pivot into something else, they can't. And that can
Hmm.
be bad too. I mean, you know, I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about guys on his job that, one guy had been on a ladder like 30 something years, and they figured out that he had only been detailed to an engine like literally 4 times in the
Wow.
30 years.
Yeah.
Like it was like it became a joke that he just wasn't the person you detailed. Dude, he
Hmm.
never moved. And those couple of times he was on the engine, they're like, I'm sure he would have been fine if he had to go down a hallway on a line. He probably
Yeah.
could have done it, but he knew everything about every ladder company in the city, and he could
Hmm.
work on any ladder in the city, and he could be on any roof at any time and do any task and any search. Um, and I'm sure it comes down to he was really good at the fundamentals of the ladder.
Yeah.
Uh, but I also think there's that jack of all trades thing that can be beneficial too, depending on the size of your organization. Um,
Hmm.
their department, this guy was talking to, his department's like 500. So like, that's a little different thing.
Yeah.
Um, so um, how do you keep up on your training?
A lot of personal time, personal effort goes into it. Um, a ton of podcasts. I listen to a ton of podcasts. I have like a 30-minute commute when I drive to work in the morning. So I'll use that to listen to podcasts, listen to audiobooks, reading books in general, fire engineering, a lot of that. The small conferences around the area. I'm very fortunate that I come from a department with a significant training budget. So if you can find a justification to go to a conference or a training and we have it in the budget, they'll send you all expenses paid
Oh,
to
that's nice.
that training. So I've gotten to bounce around and learn from a lot of people that way, experience a lot of different aspects of the fire service, talking to people from different departments.
We we talk a lot. Actually, I was talking to a few people recently about small conference training and
Hmm.
how, you know, I mean, we go down a rabbit hole. We were talking about like global economics and all this other, like whatever. But what came up was that, some of these bigger conferences are getting very expensive, and
Hmm.
conference fees expensive, traveling to these things expensive, the justification to the community for maybe the expense or time
Yeah.
away from family, whatever it might be, becomes more and more difficult. And, one of these guys that kind of trends some stuff, he said, he's noticing an uptick in like either the 1 day conference or like that one overnight conference,
Yep.
like we do some stuff during the day, have a little evening session, people go out, have a good time. Then there's another little morning session. And then after lunch, everyone says goodbye and they go home.
Hmm.
It's a 1 night hotel stay. It's driving distance. It's one or two headliners, and then a bunch of I don't want to call them nobodies because I don't mean it that way, but a
Yeah,
bunch
but
of
just
you've never
solid
heard of.
local firemen. Yeah.
Right. People you don't they're not on the national stage, but they're
Yeah.
really good at what they do. Right, they're masters of their craft and they know how to share it. And those are getting more and more popular because those, somebody can show up and spend 1 night in a hotel room, go out to
Hmm.
eat twice, have a couple of cocktails, and spend maybe $75 on getting into a conference where they're going to see maybe one or two big names and then
Yeah.
a bunch of mid-level names, and that's awesome. As opposed to having to shell out a couple $1,000, and as maybe some people's personal disposable income just gets utilized different ways right now.
Hmm.
I think there's going to be an uptick in that kind of stuff, and it's cool that you're in an area that has a lot of that.
Hmm.
Because I feel the same way about being in Massachusetts. I mean, as I mentioned, our academy's free. Like we can, all of our academy classes are free in Mass,
Yeah.
which is pretty wild because of the way we're funded. But at the
No,
same
it's
time,
great.
we're close to Connecticut. For a lot of people in Massachusetts, are close to Connecticut, or they're close to Rhode Island, or they're close to New Hampshire. All three have good fire academies that are close.
Hmm.
State New York does a lot of stuff. Like we can get in upstate New York pretty fast. Like there's a lot of opportunities. And then a lot of the fire districts in Massachusetts, some of the counties, because we still kind of have county government a little bit, but a lot of the county organizations, they bring in people.
Hmm.
And for $50, you can see somebody that normally gets a lot more than that because, they're just whatever. The fire district's just trying to offset the room cost and the meal fee. They'll absorb the speaker cost, they'll
Yeah.
absorb 5 grand or the 8 grand or whatever. They're just looking, and so I don't know. I think we might be, unfortunately, I think we might be in the minority where we are. I know the
Hmm.
Southeast, a little kind of the same way as the Northeast, but I'm sure there are other places. I mean, where the population gets further and further away from major cities or major
Yeah.
areas. It's harder because now people have got to still travel. Um,
Yeah.
I was I was at a National Fire Academy class one day, and well, one year, and I was talking to a guy about getting to the airport, and he told me that he drove 6 hours to get to an airport,
That's crazy.
to then fly to well, I'm into DC and then to Emmitsburg to drive to Emmitsburg. And I laughed, and he's like, "What are you laughing about?" I said, "In a 6 hour drive, I was in Maryland in 6 hours." I said, "In a 6 hour drive, there's probably 3 dozen international airports in a 6 hour
Hmm.
drive from my house. I mean, or more." And he's
Yeah.
like, "I just had to drive 6 hours to get to an airport." And I'm like, "That's crazy." Like, and he was from big sky countries in middle America somewhere, probably awesome to live
Hmm.
until you try to go to the airport. I
And
mean,
you definitely take it for granted.
yeah, you do. I mean, from my house, I'm literally an hour from Boston, Hartford, Providence,
Hmm.
um, a little more of that, Manchester, New Hampshire, all international airports. Um, if I want to go to Florida, the airport's literally 15 minutes. Worcester's got an airport. Like I can
Yeah.
get to
Too
Florida.
easy.
Yeah, it's just funny and talking to people about, so I think we probably got it lucky when it comes to local training.
Hmm.
Um, and still people don't take advantage of it. I've sat in plenty of classes where you look around and you go, okay, there's one person from that department and two people
Hmm.
from that department, and you're like, where's everybody? Where's like,
It's tough. It's so frustrating that
ah,
we experience the same exact thing down here
mhm.
with the training that's around and available. And I mean, well, me and some of my friends here will try to push training out. Like this is coming up. This is close. This is within 2 hours. This is within 1 hour. And it's a lot of times we're the only ones
Right,
going, unfortunately.
right, and that can be problematic. I mean,
Hmm.
it can be. It doesn't have to be, but I mean, you go to a training, you come back with some ideas, and next thing you know, maybe a boss is rolling their eyes, going, "Oh, that's what you get. You go to this training, and you come back, you want to try something new." Yeah, that's why I went. So I could
Hmm.
maybe pick up something new, make us better at the fundamentals, maybe a different way to do this hose deployment or a better way to do
Hmm.
this thing, whatever it is. And, that's why we go.
Yeah.
Nothing worse than coming back and having a great idea or a couple of them and saying to somebody, "Hey, can we try this?" And they go, "No." We,
Yeah. It's tough. Even the what I'm running into lately is a lot of the even the people that want to try things, it's coming from a place of no, like, all right, we'll try it, but just be aware, like, probably nothing's going to come from this or nothing's going to happen. And this, the mindset in general is, it's frustrating, but
yeah,
I get it a little bit with the training. Like, it's easy for me to drop everything and go to these trainings. Like, I'm married, but my wife and I don't have any children. I don't have any major outside of work responsibilities, so I can do that. It's fairly easy for me to say I'm going to stop this, go away for a weekend, go to a training, and come back.
right.
Um, but it does get frustrating sometimes, and I have to check myself every now and then.
Yeah, and I think that you were touching on something there about the way as we move through our careers, as people move through their careers, um, no becomes an easy thing to say.
Hmm.
And I had a conversation with one of my supervisors, and at one point, and I said, we seem to get a quick no. Hey, well, you got to understand, there's some stuff behind that, and this is what, and he kind of explained some things. And I went, okay, and I said, well, can I tell you what we hear when you say no? And we had a very candid conversation. I
Hmm.
respect him immensely, and I said, when you say no, we hear, because he said, I'm saying no because you're not coming to me with enough information. So, but you're not telling us that.
Yeah.
And he kind of gives me the old, oh, wait a second. And I said, see, if you now I know that. So now I'm not going to hear no from you next time. I'm going to hear not yet or not now or
We need a
I
little
need
more. Yeah.
more. Right. I said, and now you can start to train me in what you need me to bring you.
Hmm.
You understand most of the time when I bring something new, I don't want a yes. I want your okay to examine it more.
Yes. 100%. Yes.
Right? You come back from a conference with a new way to stretch a hand line, just a new way to load, a new way to stretch it. And you say, "Hey, I got this new way." And they say, "No." Well, you're not even looking for the yes. You're looking at going,
I want to try it.
let's just try it. We'll try it a couple times. We'll run a couple times. You do it a couple times. We'll have him do it a couple times, and we'll
Hmm.
see if it's any better. And then we'll do some head-to-head testing stuff. We'll have you do it the new way and we'll have them do it the old way and we'll see what happens.
Yep.
Um, we're looking for like the go ahead to do a little more research.
Yes.
But unfortunately, sometimes the easy answer is just, no, we're not doing that. No.
Yeah. And I understand a lot of times I feel very passionately about things. And so a lot of the ways that I approach things might come off, uh, it might not come off the right way, basically.
Fair.
And so there's probably ways that I could word things to let them know that I'm just trying to do more research or try some things. But yeah, I think a lot of it is opening your mind to those possibilities to try things.
Yeah. And mindset is so important.
Hmm.
And again, like as people go up through the ranks or whatever, as they become more and more responsible for things, it's easy and safe to stay
Yes.
where we are. And sometimes I think that in varied levels, we forget about that there's liability too. Like it's a real thing. I mean, lawsuits happen, bad things happen sometimes when we make mistakes or if there's problems, and liability exists. And the way we do it right now has been vetted. It's the way we know it. Everyone's trained on it. If it goes wrong, we can say, we've been doing it this way for 20 years. It's always gone right before. We don't know why it went wrong tonight. But if we do a new thing and the new thing goes wrong, why were you doing a new thing? And,
Yeah.
and it could be like, well, the old way was working. Well, why are you doing the new thing? Well, because Matt just came back from this conference. So, chief, deputy, whatever, you're
Hmm.
just because Matt came back from a conference, you're doing a new thing. Yeah, well, we tried something new. I guess it didn't work. Yeah, and you
Yeah.
burned somebody's house down or didn't effectuate the rescue or whatever, right?
Hmm.
Like, I get it,
Yeah. Same.
but at the same time, um, you know, I I don't crank start my car anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even start my car with a key. As a matter of fact, 6 days a week, my phone starts my car without any intervention at all. I don't even do anything. I get a little ding. Your car has started. Oh, thank you. Thank you
That
for
was just on the little timer. Yeah.
Yep. My app just starts my car for me.
Hmm.
So we've evolved in a lot of the ways we do things. And if
Yeah.
you're and any organization that's still doing something that's 20 years ago or 25 years old or 30 years old,
Hmm.
doesn't mean you need to change it, but you should be absolutely evaluating it against new ways of doing that thing.
Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
I mean, because it could be fine. It could absolutely still be a great way to do it for your organization.
Yeah.
But if you're not out there evaluating that, I mean, 20 years ago, I had no idea my app was going to start my car. As a matter of fact, I didn't know that. I probably didn't know that 2 years ago. I've had this car just less than 2 years. And if you
Yeah.
told me that my next car was going to have a remote starter that I could control from my phone and that you can, I would, no, no, I thought having a little push button was up perfect. You
Yeah.
didn't have to walk out there. And before that, right, my parents probably thought having a kid that can walk out and start their car.
It was
Or,
great. Yeah.
right, like that's how we evolve. And we just have to be willing to try the new thing and
Hmm.
see. Um, because someday what's going to happen is you're going to realize that whatever it is you're doing is 100 years old. And I guarantee you it's not good anymore. At 100 years old, you
It's
can't
tough.
tell me there's got to be something new that
It's tough.
we haven't evolved a better way of doing something in 100 years. We've got big problems because we've stopped having visionary people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's even the basics evolving. Like
Mm.
we're to bring it back to that is the the basics. I guess they stay the same, but I guess their application evolves. Look at things like forcible entry. Like the Halligan tool is still the Halligan tool.
Mhm.
Um, but we have to evolve the way we use it based off of modern building construction and the things that we run into. And by saying, I learned how to use it 20 years ago in the fire academy, I'm good, maybe not always the right answer, I
Mhm.
guess.
Could you imagine if there was a day that they replaced the Halligan tool with something? Now that'll be
They
interesting.
try, they really try.
They do try.
And
They do
I'm open
try.
to it. I will try
Yeah.
it, but
Right. But
I think about it sometimes and it's one of those things like he got it right.
yeah,
He got
yeah,
it right.
right. You got it. There's some staying power in this thing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but we've got to be willing to try because that's
Hmm.
when we discover whatever it is that might be new. And I think you're right. Like the fundamentals will always be the fundamentals. I guess they're like values, right? Good
Hmm.
values will always be good values. How we instill those values may change, and the
Yeah.
word we use to describe those. But integrity will always be a good value. Someday we
Hmm.
may describe it differently or define it differently. We always know what integrity is. Um,
Yeah, it's true.
oh, I mean, I think that like manners are just like good manners are good manners and their
Hmm.
values, and everyone knows what good manners is. And if you don't, you clearly don't have them. But
Yeah, we don't speak the same, but we still use the same manners.
right, we all know what manners are.
Yeah.
I mean, whether I'm in Massachusetts or Louisiana, if there's somebody, um, I'm going to hold door open for a woman. I'm going to hold door open for somebody older than me, and I'm just going
Hmm.
to. And some people get mad at me and be like, "Well, I can open my own door." Yeah, you can, but but
It's
that's
open
not how
now.
this works. Like that's
Hmm.
not, 2,000 years people have been holding doors for each other because it's the right thing to do, and we're
Yeah.
doing another 2,000 years. So fundamentals, working at them, repetition leads to mastery. Um,
Yes, indeed.
so we've talked about how you train or how
Hmm.
how you develop yourself and the importance there. We kind of talked about how you got to where you are. In your time, um, let's talk about a memorable call. I kind of use this word I know we talked about on the phone, and I always tell people that, good calls are debatable because
Hmm.
the fire service, like anything, and I'm certain, and I've never been in the military, but I would assume the military is the same way.
Very,
Good,
very similar.
good's a very interesting word
Yeah.
because good can mean something really bad happened,
Hmm.
and but we executed it correctly, therefore we had a good event. But I like to use the word memorable because I think it's just a little less political and people get what memorable is. So in your time in the fire service, and I always think about this too, is that you could be on for 48 hours, you could be on for 48 years, and you'll
Hmm.
have a memorable call. Most people remember the first couple of calls they went on. They'll remember them forever, even if they were benign,
Hmm.
or so in your time in the fire service, or even beyond that, if you want to talk about your time as a ranger,
Yeah.
memorable time, memorable call, memorable incident.
As far as memorable calls, we have a pretty, I guess, for our size of department, I would call a decent amount of fire duty. Maybe 30 on a slow year, 50 on a solid year.
Sure.
But I can remember my first significant fire, and it's memorable because I remember everything that I did wrong. It was right about when I got to my first year. I don't even know if I was off probation yet. It was maybe like a week or two before. Um, and there was an apartment fire on a second floor. It was a two story apartment. Um, I've heard it described since then as a 10-year fire, front to back, fully involved, making the push with my captain from the front door to the back of the living room. And all I can remember is everything that I did wrong. Um, Looking back at our, we were on the rescue truck, and then we ended up with the nozzle somehow. Um, the things we did before everyone else showed up, and just getting my ass kicked the entire time, basically. But it's memorable because you can take that event and approach it the same way that we're talking about the basics. Those special operations unit approach it like that extreme criticism, that extreme accountability. There's even a book about it by Jocko Willing, the extreme ownership,
Hmm.
approaching it with extreme accountability. Um, but that one fire made me infinitely better at my job. Just every little mistake after mistake after mistake that I personally um, made that probably the most memorable fire thus far. Um, and it wasn't even anything crazy. Everything went well. It there was a very good. It was a good result. The fire was extinguished quickly. There was no extension to any other apartments. No loss of life. Like by the book, it went extremely well. But all I can remember are the things I went wrong, which what makes it memorable.
Which, I mean, is good, right? It's good to be hypercritical of yourself, I think, at times. Um, and I think listen, at least this is my belief. There's a time for good enough. I mean, there's a time, and
Hmm.
it's not at work. It's not when the bell goes off. It's not in those moments of criticality. Um, but there's definitely a time where yeah, okay, I'm going to do whatever this is right now. I'm just going to do it good enough because I got other things maybe to move to.
Hmm.
Um, but being hypercritical of yourself and recognizing, you know what, I did that just good enough, and I actually should have done it for real. I should have put all the effort in. That's important, and I think sometimes people don't like to do that. Um, we are our worst our own worst critic, and we should be.
Hmm.
We should be all over ourselves, and sometimes we just have to take a look at what we're doing and realign ourselves. And for whatever reason, we get a little we either get a little lax, maybe sometime with our personal discipline, in whatever
Yeah.
regard. Um, and we just gotta get you gotta focus back up on some things. So
Yeah. And really
um,
that's what separates those great organizations from good or okay organizations is that ability to look inward and be critical and accept responsibility and then make the changes from there.
yeah, it's right. It's about just being authentic because
Hmm.
it's so often, um, somebody, so how'd that go? Oh, went well, but did it? Did it?
Yeah.
In another 10 or 15 minutes or whatever, Mac and I are going to have a conversation about this podcast and how did it go? And we're going to talk about, what did I do well? What did he do well? But we're
Hmm.
also going to say, what do we got to get better at next time? Like, what is it that we need to get better at?
Yeah.
And that's just this thing that, with no offense to anybody involved or a future guest or past guest, this thing doesn't matter. Like, in the realm of life, this thing's fun and this is
Yeah.
cool. I have a good time, and I hope the listener gets stuff out of it. But there's no life or death here. Not there's
Yeah.
And we will have genuine after action about this and go, what do we do? But I guarantee you that there are companies that are going to return from a call in 10 or 15 minutes, and somebody's going to say, how'd it go? And somebody's going to go, fine. And then
Yep.
they're going to move on. And they're going to run that exact same call in 4 days or whatever. And they're going to just do fine again. And
Hmm.
they're never even going to be authentic with each other. They're never going to say, hey, you were kind of rude to that lady when you were getting her contact information. Like, did you mean to come off as a jerk? Like, did you? And it's, oh no, was I being a jerk? But they won't even say, okay, yeah, everything went well.
Yeah.
Everything did go well. You were mean to the homeowner.
That's a
Like,
great point.
you yelled at him about not having a battery in their smoke detector. I mean, like, you almost made him cry. Like, couldn't you have gotten that message across some other way? But instead, some buddy's just gonna go, that went fine, whatever.
Yep.
And yeah, I don't know. Like, it's so, but it seems like the stuff that doesn't matter, like running a little podcast, we'll be hypercritical about and we'll be okay with that. But then you put emergency response on it, we just come back and go, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Well, anyway, do you have anything else? Because we're gonna wrap up here in another minute or two, unless you got something else.
Uh, no, I mean we've hit the basics pretty good. It's what I really hope people take from this, if anybody listens, would be what we talked about was like it's the boring stuff that matters, and you don't have to look far to see the results of that. There are other organizations, not just in the military, but professional sports organizations, Fortune 500 companies that have done this and learned these lessons and have the success to show for it. Um, a great example I like to use, we talked about the medical training and the Ranger Regiment, is that's drilled into everybody from the first day you step foot into the organization. And a testament to that would be the 2 decades of continuous warfare. If you want to look at that, the Ranger Regiment has been deployed for since 2001 until the end of Afghanistan, end of Iraq. They're still in Syria, so that's 20 years in Afghanistan, 15 years in Iraq, about 10 years coming up in Syria. And in that time, out of the 62 fatalities that have occurred, which is pretty low for that amount of combat duty, not a single death has been pre-hospital preventable, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So no one has died of a combat wound that could have been prevented in a pre-hospital setting, um, which is an incredible statistic. So
Sure.
these people that have been killed could have been killed on an operating table, and there's nothing
Right.
that could have been done for them. And that in itself is a testament to these basic skills that need to be practiced, that need to be honed. Um, Very simple. It's putting on a tourniquet, assessing someone's breathing, checking their pulse, getting their vitals, packing a wound, putting a bandage on, reassessing. Um, and so there's the importance of stressing the basics. Just can't can't be overstated.
And you bring up a good point about the basics, and it made me think about the fact that if we're talking about motivating people to do the basics,
Hmm.
we don't have to make it about the fire service.
No.
If you're a senior firefighter or even a junior firefighter, and you're trying to get somebody else in the company to join you to do some basic drills, maybe you bring up a Fortune 500 company. Maybe you bring up a military unit, or maybe you bring up something abstract.
Sports. Yeah.
Right, sports, somewhere, whatever you can do to make the connection. You realize that somebody played college football, they're a big football fanatic, but they don't like to train in the SCBA. And then all of a sudden you make a little analogy between, whatever, doing some football drill versus doing some SCBA drill. Next thing you know, they're like, oh, I kind of get what you're talking about. I see there's a correlation there.
Hmm.
And next thing you know, they're doing some SCBA drills with you. Are they doing them for 2 hours? Maybe they're not doing them for 2 hours.
No.
They're doing them for 10 minutes.
That's a start.
Right. It's a start. Right. It's a start.
Yeah. What do the best quarterbacks do? They'll sit there and they'll do drop back drills for hours and hours.
Yep. Yep. Over and over and over again, just to get better and better and better.
Yep.
The fundamentals practice constantly will definitely improve, right? All performance. So if you've got nothing else, Matt, I've got nothing else.
Yeah, for sure.
My name is Dean Babineau. Our guest today has been Matt Berkins. Our executive producer is Mac Rice. Join us next time when we will be talking fire.